Welcome to Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living with your host, Rosalind Sedaka. Join Rosalind each week on a journey toward overcoming life's many challenges to achieve peace, empowerment, and positive transformation. It's time to relax, unwind, and transform your life with Rosalind Sedaka.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Going Solo Network. This is Rosalind Sedaka, and you're listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, the Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living show. As you know, I am a divorce and dating and relationship coach specializing in child-centered divorce, and I bring to you each week guests who have important values and expertise on topics that I think will be interesting and useful for our listeners. And this week I'm just so honored to be introducing you to Azmaira, who's a PhD clinical psychologist, author, consultant. She's the author of a book, an award-winning children's book called Family Changes, Explaining Divorce to Children. And I've read the book, and I'm very impressed with her take on this really challenging topic. And so we're going to talk a bit about that and other things that are relevant for families who are coping with divorce and have children. So Azmaira, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Why don't you give us a brief background about yourself so people know who they're listening to?
Sure. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I specialize in children and families. I have expertise in trauma and loss. I trained at the University of Michigan, and I did some specialty work at the law school there at the Child Advocacy Clinic. So a lot of my work in therapy, in teaching, and consultations focuses on child development as related to trauma in general, as well as loss, including divorce.
Yes. And we're going to focus a lot on divorce today. And let's start by asking you about some of the more common struggles that you see between parents when they're divorcing, especially with young children.
I think one of the most common struggles I see in my practice and in clinics, is when the parents fight over the child, not just for custody, but also for the day-to-day decision-making. Because the child is so young, if they're 3, 4, 5, the child usually often is not asked their opinions, their thoughts, and so the parents get into a tussle of making all these choices for the kids. And I think it often turns into a battle when the kid's young of who the child should stay with and how their daily life decisions should be made and who's going to be making them. From which pediatrician to use, to which school program they want to go to which aftercare they want to use, which nanny they have to choose, etc., etc.
Yeah, those are vitally important questions and can make a big difference in the outcome of the divorce for years ahead, not only in the immediate future. So your services are really, really valuable. I know that you have primary 10 golden rules of positive divorce that you recommend to minimize the negative impact of divorce on children, and I'd love for you to share something about that.
Sure. I give a handout to my clients, to my families, with the 10 golden rules saying, if you want this divorce to go well, your child will fare well if you follow these rules. The more you veer from these kind of golden rules, there's going to be a higher probability of a negative impact on your kids. It's not the divorce per se that affects the kids, it's how you do the divorce that affects the kids. So one of my first rule is no blame games. You don't present to the child, even if they're very young, in a format explaining the divorce or the choices in a way that blames the other parent. So your father is choosing to leave us. Your mother is making me sell the house. Any kind of even nuanced blame puts the kid in the position of taking sides, that somehow the other parent is bad and I'm not supposed to ally with the other parent. I have to ally with one parent, and that's when the tug-of-war begins. Another one is put downs. You often hear parents making comments to the child about the other parent in the divorce process. Your mother's so disorganized. Your father never follows through with the bills. It's just negative commentary, even if it's not about the child. The child begins to absorb this, and once again, the child is kind of put in the middle of, is there a good, bad parent here? I've got one family I'm working with where it's a high conflict divorce. It's been going on 1.5 years. The kid in my office yesterday just tells me, I don't know which parent is lying. One parent says, Dad's making me sell the house. And the other parent is saying, no, Mom is choosing to sell the house. I just gave her X amount of money, so there's no need to sell the house. Who's lying? One of them is lying. And that's much more harmful than the divorce itself. I think if parents can be fair and reasonable with each other, the child will fare well. Consistency and predictability is also huge in terms of schedules, pick-up, drop-off, holidays. Young kids need consistency and predictability. Calendars, I often tell my families, put up a calendar, a visual tool, and have the kid help you plug in the dates and keep them as consistent as possible, and the child can begin to rely on that. So there's predictability. Sometimes kids have unique special needs, emotionally, socially, and parents need to pay attention to those developmental needs, especially if they're young kids. So, you may not have the same schedule for all the children in the family. If there's one kid who has some unique needs, you may have to adapt your schedule for that child and adapt custody, etc., for that child. And I think the biggest one is cooperative co-parenting, where if you work together, you collaborate in reasonable, fair, consistent ways with each other, your child is probably resilient and is going to do fine. So if you can treat your partner in a fair way, neutral way, it'll dribble down to the children, and they'll come out okay. So those are the most important, I think, pieces.
And they're such important pieces, and I'm so glad you're able to share them with our listeners. And I'm reassured knowing, because this is the same information that I've been using and sharing with clients, and it's wonderful to hear it reinforced by you, because I just feel it's so crucial when parents understand these factors, and that it's not the divorce per se that creates the problems, it's how the parents handle the divorce. That is a huge piece of the puzzle that is often overlooked, and it has to be reinforced again and again. So thank you so much for that. So let me ask
I've got an article.
Yes.
I've got an article on this on my website. So if you go to aspiringfamilies.com, it's on my blog. So if anybody wants to read it directly, they can go to that resource.
Aspiringfamilies.com. Absolutely.
Correct.
That'll be very, very valuable. So what do you feel divorcing families get stuck on and makes it most debilitating for the children?
Time with kids. Time and control over kids. It's kind of a global general theme, but it keeps popping up. I want more time with my kids. I want control over my kids. I don't want you making the choices and decisions. I don't want you to have more time than I do. And it turns into a battle about time and control, and really they forget about the kid in the process. It turns into a power struggle between the parents. And it's about themselves, but it's also about taking away from the other parent. It's kind of punitive in the relationship if it's a negative divorce, if it's not a mutual kind of decision. And then the kid directly gets caught in that power struggle tug of war, because the parents will pull and pull and pull on the child. I've got an adult I'm working with. Her parents got divorced when she was 10. She still hates Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving, because each parent will pull on her to spend time with her and try to manipulate the situation to control it so that the other parent doesn't get time. It can be so long-term, it can be chronic. I've got another family where they've been divorcing for 5 years. They're still trying to figure out the finances. Father's one religion, mother's another religion. Come December, the power struggle begins again. Who should the children spend the holidays with, and which spiritual format shall they spend it with? So I think it's more about power and control.
Yes, power and control. Let me ask you this. Shared parenting has become a big factor in the divorces in the U.S. political system, and there's a lot of gender wars taking place between moms and dads, each accusing the other of being manipulative and controlling and all of that. And again, based on what you were saying with power and control, do you feel that there's any way of legislating shared parenting and making something like 50-50, or is each divorce so unique and individual that we should really be looking at the family per se rather than coming up with regulations that are universal?
Right. I think I'm thinking more from the judges or the lawyers' point of view. If we come in with an assumption of 50-50, because I do believe in equal parent rights. I think children thrive when they have two good parents or multiple parents, good parents in their lives. The more grown-ups who can take care of you, the better off you are in positive, nurturing ways. If we start from that assumption, then go to, okay, is this person capable? Are these two people capable of sharing and parenting in cooperative, positive ways? That's the second layer. If your answer comes up no, then right there you have to go to the individual level. Well, given this couple, given this family system, given this child and this child's developmental needs, what's in the best interest of the kid? What should we do now? So I think if you take it to the legislative level, you have to be really, really careful about all or nothing. I don't think that's possible because each parent is unique and each child is unique and each family system is unique. So to make it a have to without any clauses, I think could be risky for the kids. But I think to go in with an assumption saying, okay, parents have equal rights and now what do we do in the best interest of this kid given these two parents' parenting skills?
Yes. Well, thank you. That was clear and very effective in focusing on this huge issue of challenges, and I appreciate your sharing that with the listeners as well as me because I get issues around that all the time. We're going to take a quick break right now. This is Rosalind Sedaka with WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network, and you're listening to Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, Singles Talk Radio channel, where we take a lighthearted and candid approach to discussions on the journey of relationship loss, divorce, parenting, being single, relationships building, dating, and yes, sex. Join our listeners and begin living your best life.
Hello, everyone. This is Rosalind Sedaka. We're back with WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. We're on Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living, and this is Rosalind Sedaka, Divorce and Parenting Coach, and I'm interviewing Azmaira Maker, PhD, clinical psychologist, author, consultant, and author of the wonderful book, Family Changes, Explaining Divorce to Children. And I'd like to focus a little bit on your children's book because I know your goal is to make it easier for parents and children to begin addressing the complications of divorce. So what are the important developmental factors that you address through this book, which is a beautiful book to read, it's a beautiful book to look at, and I know you have important messages in there for parents as well as children.
Right. So because I work with a lot of families, I wanted a tool that I could use in my office and give to parents to facilitate a young child's understanding of divorce and coping with divorce. And parents often ask me, what should I say? How should I say it? How should I answer the questions? What kind of questions will be asked? In this book, there's a guide for parents that kind of explains young children's development and the process of comprehending a big topic. And the most important piece is that children understand things in small bites, small, simple bites. So the language in the book is very simple. The images are, like you said, very beautiful, and I think children gravitate to that. So I'm giving parents through the book a language to use and words and sentences to use with the child directly. The other piece is that there are process questions at the end of the book. Those are typical questions that kids usually ask. And so parents can actually go through them on their own and prepare their answers in a consistent, predictable way when they're explaining the divorce to the kids or even later when kids ask questions, 100 times over. Kids don't have a one-time sit-down discussion about divorce. It's going to be a longer process. So I usually say to parents, use this book as a start. You may just start with just the images if it's a very young child. The book has a range of feelings expressed through the main character, which is a bunny whose parents are going through a divorce. And the message is kids can have a range of feelings over time. The book starts in the morning and ends in the evening. So the kid may have questions throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. It's a process for the child. And it'll pop up randomly even for the child. And parents should allow that. And parents should allow kids to have those feelings, validate those feelings, and that's what's happening in the book. It's providing a role model for the parents on how to respond to a kid's feelings, whether it's mad, sad, jealous, confused, self-blame. It really walks the theme, and the story walks the parent through all these feelings and the kid through all these feelings, along with the questions. And the big takeaway is, this is a scary topic, but we can address it with young children in healthy, simple, adaptive ways and positive ways. And children can ask a range of questions, children can have a range of feelings, and we can handle it. We as parents can handle this in positive ways. That's the biggest takeaway I'm hoping for this book.
Yes, and I, as the founder of the Child Centered Divorce Network, I am sent books for talking to children about divorce, have been sent over the years dozens of different books, and I've never found one that I could really endorse the same way as I feel about your book, because so many of them have been off in some way, either off message or not broad enough base to handle the vast array of situations that children are facing, because no two divorces are alike and no two families are alike. And this book has a way of enveloping it because you're focusing on feelings rather than situations. It's not about who initiated the divorce and how old the child is. It's about other deeper, more complex issues. And you have a way of handling that in the language of the book that I was very, very impressed with.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate that feedback.
And I especially appreciate the process questions for adults to discuss with children at the end. So many of these books don't have something for the adults, whether they're the parents or whether they're a professional, to finish the conversation with or open the door to more conversation. And I think it's essential for parents to have these wonderful questions that they could start asking depending on the age of the child, depending on the circumstances that the child is in. And some of these questions may be relevant the first time the parent talks with the child, and others may be relevant 2 months later, but they're all there for the parents to be aware of. And very often, if they're looking through that, they'll find a question that's just perfect to initiate a conversation or to help answer a question that the child is asking. So
and it gives the parents some preparation. Exactly. It gives the parents some preparation and understanding, too, of how do I do this and how do I do this well.
Absolutely. So how do you use your book with kids in therapy yourself?
So parents usually share, that they're getting divorced. They need to tell their kids. We talk about alternate methods to do this. I offer them the book. If they feel confident enough doing it on their own, they take the book and they can use it in their own home and come back with feedback and questions to me. Or we sometimes sit in the room together. We all sit on the floor. And sometimes, I think sometimes when you have very anxious parents or you have a child who we expect a pretty dramatic response from, that may involve safety issues, then we have the parents come to the office and we all sit down and we start kind of reading the book, and through that process we tell the child, this is what's happening. I ask the parents to tell the child directly, and then we try to use the book a little more to answer any questions, let the child look at the pictures. But we just begin the dialogue, we just begin. And I've had kids take the book and they read it at home on their own. And then I've had feedback that sometimes the siblings have wanted their own book and asked, like, can we have our own? And then they pick it up at random moments. Like I've got feedback from colleagues and friends that the kids are picking up the book on their own and then beginning to read it. And take it back to the, so kids are having some control over this process too. It's not just the parents. So there are different ways. I've had teachers give me feedback that when a kid has gone through a divorce in a classroom, 50% of the kids in school have a divorced home. So it happens very frequently. And when they're young kids, the teacher's like, well, I don't know how to explain this. How do we talk about it with the other children? And they've used the books in classrooms.
Oh, that's wonderful. I believe every guidance counselor should have this book, at least in elementary school level, so that this is something that they have that they could use as a resource in the schools, and it certainly would be useful for every divorce coach and every therapist who's dealing with families that are handling parents and young kids in the divorce process. Are there any other ways that your book are different from other typical books for children on divorce?
So one of the reasons I was motivated to write this book is that, previous books, there are lots of books out there that have been written quite a while back, but they're very simplistic, one sentence story. I just found them too linear, too simplistic. I think even a 4 or 5-year-old goes through very complicated feelings and very complicated questions and a complicated process. And I wanted a book that would allow, like you said earlier, allow for that complicated process to emerge and be discussed and explained in simple, clear ways to the child. So I think the book differs in that it's broader. It is a story. It's not just one-line sentences. It covers a range of feelings. It covers a range of questions. So I feel like it just has more meat to it. But parents have to be willing to go there with the kid, right? And willing to process the meat with the child.
Yeah, and it's very important for parents to understand that there's no tool. You don't give a child a book and say, okay, now this is covered. This is a resource to help you do the parenting job you need to do, because no one knows your children better than you, and you want to be there to make this transition for the children as smooth and effortless as possible. And a big piece of that is your own take on it. The way you approach the divorce will affect and influence the way the children will accept it. And that's why all these guidelines that you're providing are so useful and valuable. And that's why the Child-Centered Divorce Network is there to help parents understand effective co-parenting strategies so that you can make this as easy as possible for the children that you love. Azmaira, I want to stop here and make sure our listeners have an opportunity to find you and get access to you, your services, and your book. So please tell us about ways we can contact you and take advantage of your expertise.
So my website is aspiringfamilies.com, and if you go to it, you will find the book on the website. You will also find several blogs that focus on divorce, but also focus on other mental health issues for children, such as anxiety, learning difficulties, giftedness. There's also a page for resources for parents, links to books and articles that are mostly research-based that parents can also find useful for a range of topics, including divorce. And then my email contact is right on the website, aspiringfamilies.com. And you can there's a Ask the Doctor link, and you can just click on that and send a message to me if you want. So it's pretty straightforward. And the book is also available on Amazon for those who want to purchase it through Amazon.
Excellent. And again, the name of the book is Family Changes, Explaining Divorce to Children. And that's Azmaira, Azmaira, Maker, Maker, PhD, the author. So you could find it on Amazon as well. So are you available to people in your practice both for adults and children that you do work with?
Yes, I am. I did my training in both the adult track and the child and family track at the University of Michigan. So a lot of my work is with parents in terms of parenting, but my work is also around loss and trauma and other areas with adults. But I also work with kids and teens.
That is wonderful, and that makes you such a valuable resource. I know you are based in San Diego, California, but I imagine you are available to to work with people via phone or Skype anywhere around the country or the world. Is that so?
Yes, but I think there are licensing regulations. It depends on the state, if that state allows it. There are all these licensing rules and regulations. So one would have to check, to make sure that there's cross-state permission. Some states allow it, some states don't.
I see. So at least they could check out your website.
Exactly.
And then find out how they could find you, and they could get the book, obviously, from anywhere.
Correct.
So that's the most important thing. So can you leave us with words of wisdom, a takeaway for our listeners as a reminder of their responsibilities when it comes to the divorce and parenting equation?
I think what my biggest request to parents and parents I work with is, I know it's hard, but if you can move yourself out of the way and put your child in front instead, and move your needs, your desires, your hurts out of the way, the process will go well. It's usually us that gets in the way of us. And so I think the focus is not just the kids have to do the work, but can parents shift themselves a little bit out of the way to focus on the children instead. And I think that makes it simpler.
That's wonderful advice, and I am so grateful that you spent the time with us, talking with us. You have wonderful resources and services available. Again, this is Azmaira Maker, PhD, who's a clinical psychologist, author of Family Changes, Explaining Divorce to Children, and she has services. And if you visit her website, you'll be able to take advantage of wonderful blog articles, and that's at aspiringfamilies.com. So thank you. We really, really appreciate your interview today.
Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, too.
Well, this is Rosalind Sadaka, divorce and parenting coach, founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, and you've been listening to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. And the show is Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living. Be sure to check us out every week because we have wonderful expert guests who are sharing valuable information on all facets of divorce, dating, and empowered living. Thank you and goodbye for now.